Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on ABC News Live for this very special edition of In the Kitchen, extending the conversation. Every week on ABC, our network primetime special, Soul of the Nation, takes a deeper look at Black life in America and unveils some of those hard truths that we all have to reckon with. Each Soul of the Nation episode has a segment called In the Kitchen, where we have the same honest conversations that are common around the kitchen tables of many Black families. The conversations are so good, we wanted to keep them going.
Hi, I'm Sunny, and we're in the kitchen. Welcome to the kitchen.
Hey.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So we're talking about sports today. We've all known what it's like to be the only brown face in the room and how that feels. Maybe you felt that way at work, and there are a lot of Black athletes facing those very same struggles in sports that are predominantly white. It makes me think of Meghan Markle trying to express what it feels like being the only brown person in her all-white world. What are the challenges of being the so-called one Black face in the room when it comes to sports?
It's just something that, it's just part of your experience. So when that's all you know, that's all you know. So, you know, when you're the only woman in the room, when you're the only Black woman in the room, when you're the only African American person in the room, it's just what you're used to. But you also know that you can't mess up. That, you know, if you're the only one, you're representing everyone who looks like you. So your margin for error, or at least if you take pride and any sense of ownership in that, that means something. Don't embarrass your people. Don't embarrass women. Don't embarrass African Americans. Don't embarrass your family. So for me, that's just been my mindset all throughout my life.
Wow. Does it feel more like a burden or a privilege?
Privilege. Absolutely a privilege. I think it is. That this privilege has been bestowed upon me, and you just try to be worthy of it every day, every time you go to work, every time you go out into the street. You just try to live up to who's looking up to you.
And you said you were looking up to her.
Absolutely. I was going to say, of course, I was looking up to you, Lisa. You're like the only one. You know, when you're a Black girl and you want to be a sports broadcaster, I mean, there are very few names that come to mind, and it's like Robin Roberts, Lisa Salters, and she was Pam Oliver, and you guys were doing exactly what I wanted to do, like be on the sidelines at football games. But I remember how difficult it was when I first started college football, and you walk into these production meetings, so you know you're going in and having meetings with coaches, and you're sitting there with the head coach, you're sitting there with the director, you're sitting there with your play-by-play and your analyst, and usually these are all white men. And for me, it was all white men over, you know, maybe 50, and you're coming in as a 20-something, and I always just felt like I didn't belong in the room, or you wonder like if you deserve to be in the room. And for a year, I didn't ask questions. Like I didn't really assert myself.
See,
and
you were a college athlete. You're over 6 feet tall.
I know.
Would think that you would be at an advantage.
No, I mean, because a coach would come in the room and they would know everyone there, so they're hi, 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 and you just feel like unseen a little bit, even though you're obviously like, you stick out like a sore thumb.
So how did you model off of Lisa? Because that tells me representation matters.
Yeah. I mean, when you're trying to figure out what you want to do and you decide sports broadcaster, you're going to look for images that look like you. And for me, it was Lisa Salters, and it was Pam Oliver, and it was Robin Roberts. And like, that is who you're looking to. But when I first started out, the one example that always comes to mind is walking into a production meeting, and you're there with coaches, college football coaches, you're there with your director and your producer and your analyst and your play-by-play, and I'm the only person of color, you're a woman there, you stick out like a sore thumb. But I also have never felt so small and wanting to like disappear, because there's a fear in that you don't belong or in some way are not as deserving as everyone else who is in the room. So for a year, I didn't ask questions. I did not go for a year. I was silent. Like, I think that everyone thought I was mute. All the college coaches probably did. But then I remember hearing Lisa Salters talking about her production meetings for football and how she asks questions and how she goes about like kind of doing her research. And I was like, Lisa's asking questions. I can do it. And I should. And you're in those rooms for a reason. Your voice matters, your opinion matters, your take on certain subject matters is important, and it's a privilege, like you said, but I also feel like it's a duty because not many of us are there, and we have to, you know, uphold that while we're in those rooms.
And I wanted to add to that people ask us all the time what it feels like to be the only woman in the room and what it's like to be a woman in sports, and do you feel like you've ever been discriminated against because you're a woman? And my answer has always been, no, I've never felt that. Maybe it has happened behind my back that I didn't know about, but I've never felt that. More to the point though, early on in football, in my early days of doing football, I would feel that they're not looking at me. They're not looking at me in the room. It's got to be because I'm a woman. That's got to be it. And now what I've come to realize is that people look at who they're comfortable, who they know. So they weren't looking at me, they weren't not looking at me necessarily because I was a woman and they didn't respect me. They didn't know who I was, because now, flash forward, all these years later, the new guys in the room, and we have had a couple of new crews over the last five years or so, they don't get looked at because the coach comes in and he doesn't know them. He knows me. And he's looking at me and I'm thinking, you need to look at, that's the head lead analyst, or that's the, you know, it's play-by-play, like. So it's human nature. People will look at who they know.
But that's the baggage that you bring into the meeting as a black person, because you're instantly thinking, like, is it my skin color? Like, what is it about me that they don't see? Yeah, they don't respect me or something, where the new white man probably doesn't feel that way. He's like, oh, I got to get to know Coach.
In the kitchen, extending the conversation continues on ABC News Live after the break. Welcome back to the kitchen, extending the conversation.
What do you think, Mark? I mean, you've been the only.
Yeah, well, in the first couple years of my career, I was covering the University of Arkansas's football and basketball team in the Southeastern Conference.
Oh,
That's just my dog in the kitchen.
Come on, there's a dog now.
Get some treats.
So you're covering Arkansas.
No, so yeah, my first couple years as a sports writer, I covered Arkansas's football and basketball team in the Southeastern Conference. I covered the Angels, covered Major League Baseball in both situations. I was usually the only black dude there covering it. I had one situation in Starkville, Mississippi, where when I arrived, they refused to rent me a car because I was black.
Really?
And so I was shook and ended up finding some mom and pop place that gave me a Buick Skylark to use. It was like an '88 Buick Skylark, and took it to the game, and all the other reporters could tell something was wrong. They were all white reporters covering Arkansas, and I'll never forget it. Like after the game that day, they told me to come to dinner with them in Mississippi. Like they wanted to make sure I was comfortable, but it's crazy that something like that even happened. You know, I understand why a lot of black reporters gravitate to the NBA and to the National Football League. Is because you want to be around people that look like you. You want it to be comfortable. And then there's not a lot of us covering baseball or hockey or even college sports. And I think a lot of it is it's an uncomfortable space for us.
Yeah. Do you think that it would be helpful if more of us covered those sports?
Yeah, I try to push a lot of the young journalists to, you know, think outside the box and you know, cover hockey, cover baseball, and it's like twisting their arm for them to even consider it. They just want to do NBA and football. But what I try to tell them is, you know, you're gonna move up the ladder faster. Yeah, like there's none of us there, you know. So we're like, wow, black dude want to cover baseball? Come on, you know. And
that's my life story. Is I was at ABC News for 5 years before I even transitioned to ESPN, and you know would have likely stayed at ABC because you think once you get to the network, you're at the pinnacle. It would seem silly to go anywhere else, and I had to decide: do I stay at ABC? Do I go to ESPN? And a friend of mine said, "Well, how many women are at ESPN?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, a handful." He goes, "How many black women?" I was like, Robin Roberts, but she just left. And he's like, "So you would be it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You're an idiot. Of course, you're going to go to ESPN." Well, why? So you can be somebody. You can make a name for yourself there. You'll stand out. And I thought, okay. And that was, you know, 1990. No, that was in 2000. So what are we? That was 21 years ago.
So there's power being the only in the room,
It could
even though it's
benefit you.
hard.
If you don't mess up.
Yeah.
If you don't mess up.
I remember
don't mess
going
up.
to, when I was working in Louisville, Kentucky, I had to cover an auto race in Indiana.
You had some horrible something.
Oh man. So I show up there and I'm the only black dude at the entire race, and the press meal was fried chicken.
Oh,
And
do
I
you,
was
do,
like-
you eat, do you eat that in front of everybody else?
I was hungry.
You guys bring up a great point where if you are excellent in a space or if you don't make mistakes, there is an opportunity to be fast-tracked in so many ways. Because I do think that, you know, companies, teams, like they're looking for an opportunity to hire. A lot of times the excuse is that we just can't, where are you guys at? Like, where are the reporters? Where are the Marc Spears? Where are the Lisa Salters? We can't find them and we've been looking. And so when you have an opportunity and you hold on to it, I mean, you can have a long career in some of these white spaces.
And does that mean you get to open up the door for someone else?
You know, as a chair of the sports task force with the National Association of Black Journalists, I remember going to this sports editors convention, going in the room, and 90% of the sports editors were white, 85% of them were probably women, and them saying that they didn't know how to find black sports writers, sports journalists. I'm like, what do you mean? They just, we don't know. And I think the thing is, maybe some of it was racist, but another thing is they just calling their friends and getting references.
Right.
And so what we did is they called me, and I was like, if you call me, I'll give you 3 to 5 qualified people. Qualified or more than qualified people for each position. And so I don't want to hear no excuse about we can't find any black journalists. You call me and we'll start facilitating that. And I noticed, and that was around 2016 or so, after we started doing that, the number of black journalists going into different organizations started to rise a little bit, because I didn't give them an excuse anymore. We didn't give them an excuse anymore. We're going to give you names, experienced names that are ready to go.
You agree? You then get to open up the door for someone else.
Oh, absolutely. That's going back to what I said earlier. If you, when you're the one up there climbing up the ladder first, you just can't fall, because if you fall, you're going to wipe out all those people who are climbing right behind you. So you just have to keep climbing and stay true, because it's about more than just you. It's about opening the doors and, you know, paving the way for the people behind you. I mean, there would be nothing more tragic than for me to have failed, for Maria to have failed, for the kid watching, the little girl at home watching, to see us fail and think, well, maybe that can't be us. So, you know, is it a burden? You could look at it that way, but it also is a privilege to be paving the way and inspiring people behind you,
Well, you had
so
to
that they.
feel good that she said that about you.
I mean, it felt great.
'Cause,
Yeah, I mean,
I
it felt
mean,
absolutely great. I say the same thing to Pam.
You're humble about your legend.
I say the same thing to Pam Oliver all the time, that, you know, she's the OG.
It's quite a responsibility, though, to have to think about everything that you say and everything that you do, because it not only reverberates for you and your family, but it reverberates for an entire community.
Absolutely. Don't you feel that way?
Yeah.
Yes.
But then you probably
do.
feel, do you
Yes,
feel the
see?
responsibility to go back and, like, you have to lift someone else up? Because I feel lifted up by them. I say their names, but like, Lisa's like, you're doing a Monday Night Football game? What do you need? Tell me anything you need, and I'm checking in to make sure you're getting everything you're getting. And she could have easily been like, they're putting another black girl on another Monday Night Football game, and that's my territory, and like torn it down. But she was like, I want you to be great, and how do we make this look great? Or when I started doing NBA, and Marc is like, whatever you need. Like, the fraternity and sorority that's built between black people that work in sports is unique, because we're not crabs in a barrel. Like, we're constantly pulling each other up the ladder, and I'm thankful for that. Like, I love the fact that that exists, but it's like, it's a cultural phenomenon that it doesn't, there's no tear down in it.
You don't want to always be the only one in the room, because there's space at the table for everyone, right?
Hopefully.
Right.
There's space, but you don't always get invited.
You don't always get invited. But really, I mean, if you think about it, someone told me that when you do have every decision about your career is made when you're not in the room. And so when you get the opportunity to be in the room and you have some sort of political capital, you should use that capital to help someone else get into the room with you.
You know how I think more of us get into the room? There needs to be more of the people we see over, I guess they're not in the kitchen, they're in the living room. You know, like the Galen Gordons of the world, you know, like the Tara Augusts, the people behind the scenes who bring us in.
In the Kitchen, extending the conversation continues on ABC News Live after the break. Welcome back to the Kitchen, extending the conversation.
My whole time coming up, I think I worked for one black sports editor, Neil Scarborough. But other than that, it's, you know, typically trying to convince a white man to give you a chance. You know? So we need, this is the sexy position, to be on TV, to have my name on the top of an article, but it's the sports editors, the producers, the station managers. Ultimately, I think those are the ones going to change how everything looks.
We're not the game changers.
No, we're not.
No. We might be faces of change, like you can see it happening, but we're not really turning the gears, you know, and it did for me, and I don't know about for you guys, but it took a white person being in a room and having that conversation.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So there are a lot of allies and people, obviously, that have to be advocating for you. But you're right, if we get more decision makers in the room, then some of the conversations that we have sound a little different. That eye contact that we're talking about when you walk into a room and an understanding, then it might be easier to hire. I remember having a conversation with someone, and it's all about HBCU football and covering those games. And they had put someone who was not of color on the sidelines, and I said, I think that was an opportunity missed. And he was like, well, we didn't want to make a decision based on color. And I was like, this is the time, I think, you know. but if you haven't had a discussion with anyone that's not black about that, then no one's going to tell you, you know. And so those are the kind of conversations that have to happen.
I don't think I have ever had a boss of color. Not covering college football, not covering the NBA, not covering the NFL. Not
Come
at
to the
E60.
undefeated.
I have never. What's that?
Come to the undefeated. We got a lot of
I've
black
never
people.
had a boss of color
Kevin
at
Meredith,
ESPN.
Never.
Wow. How long? 20 years?
21 years.
I have another question. Division I universities make millions of dollars from the names and likenesses of their student athletes. At this point in time, the NCAA says that it is illegal to pay student athletes. Has the time come to finally pay the players their worth?
I've long been an advocate for allowing players to use their likeness and the ability for them to make money. If I am a national championship winning quarterback and I wasn't allowed to post on my IG story, you know, with a sponsor and make money, that might be, you know, the time that I am most valuable in my life, that moment in time. Millions of people come and watch the national championship, billions of dollars. Billions, like almost $10 billion are made every year by these big schools, and most of it is funded off of the back of football and basketball. And to just say, well, we put a roof over your head and we made sure you didn't starve, it's not enough.
They need to hurry up and just allow them to make, you know, money off their likeness and everything. You know, California has okayed it. Colorado has okayed it, although that'll be 2023. You know, Florida's okayed it and starting in July. But at some point, the athletes need to stop waiting on the NCAA to do the right thing, waiting on the colleges to do the right thing, and they're probably just going to have to shut it down.
How do they shut it down?
It's certainly easier said than done, because how do you get 130 football programs to shut it down, or all the basketball programs, or all athletics? You know, I respect the Northwestern football program in 2015 for trying to fight the labor union. They lost, but they tried.
Yes.
You know, we saw the Milwaukee Bucks say we're not going to play. Then the rest of the NBA followed. The NBA shut down for 3 days. It ended up impacting Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League, the Women's NBA, and Naomi Osaka. It ended up impacting voting polling across the country. What the NBA players did ultimately, I think, impacted the election. Now, these are grown men who are in their 20s and 30s and have money and aren't scared And because these guys don't have money to lose, they should be less scared. Things will happen immediately.
Yeah,
But
that's the one thing that happened in 2020 that was a real positive. That for those players in the NBA that I just have so much respect for them to do what they did. Every single one that I talked to said that was the main reason that they went to the bubble. I mean, it was a tremendous sacrifice. I mean, the teams who were there till the end were there for 3 months, isolated, away from their families. The main reason that they went to the bubble was so that their voices could be heard and that they could use their platforms. And yet every single one of them had a story to tell about how they had been impacted by racism, social injustice, someone in their family.
But isn't it risky if these players get together and decide, unless I get paid, I'm not going to play?
Really risky.
Well,
The access.
The access, if they call their bluff.
Yeah.
That's
not going to
They're going to be in the
Not gonna
same
happen?
trick bag 20 years from now that they are now. It's not going to change.
So if you were to predict, will this change in the next 5 years?
No.
I do think that they'll be able to get money off their likenesses, like this video game is coming out. But even then, that's like, I mean, it's $1,500 probably per football player when this football game comes out. So I think the likeness thing will happen, where they'll make money off of their likeness, but they ain't giving them no money.
Yeah, I probably agree with Mark that the name, image, and likeness will come into play, and the coaches will still make $10 million, and the kids
Right.
will play the game.
I really thought that they were getting close to this issue being resolved then, that, okay, players are finally going to start to get paid, student athletes. So, you know, here we are, what, 6 years later, and we're still talking about this issue.
In the Kitchen, extending the conversation continues on ABC News Live after the break. Welcome back to the Kitchen, extending the conversation.
Lisa, I'll start with you. When is the moment that you knew you were black?
The moment that I knew that being African American was going to be a problem for some people was when I was 7 years old. I was in second grade. My family had moved from the inner city of Philadelphia to a suburb of Philadelphia, and we were in a predominantly white community, and we had a second grade play. It was my first year at the school. We had a play, and I was cast as the lead. Not necessarily because I was any better or worse as an actress than the other kids, but because I could carry a tune. It was a musical, and I was like one of the few kids who could actually carry a tune. And I just thought it was the greatest thing in the world. But some of those parents, they did not. They complained to the school. I remember, you know, my memory of it isn't that clear, but I just remember my parents telling me how, you know, great this was, that you're going to be great, and, you know, how proud of me that they were. But I do remember it causing a problem in the community, that they didn't think, that many parents didn't think that this little black girl should have the lead in the class play. And I remember my parents at the play, like yelling. I'm 55 now, so that was what, 48 years ago?
Yeah.
Them yelling and cheering and taking pictures, like you would have thought that I was Angela Bassett. So that was my moment.
Mark, when was the moment when you knew that you were black?
The moment I knew I was black was around 3rd or 4th grade. I grew up in San Jose, California, which the neighborhood I grew up with was extremely diverse. Actually was more black and brown than it was white. But I did face a lot of racism from the Asian community and from the Hispanic or Latinx community. And there was one night I had a friend, a kid that was Asian kid, and he invited me over to stay the night at his house. Stayed the night, had a good time, got up in the morning, my dad picked me up. As soon as we walked into the house, his mother had called. Dad picked up the phone, and she said, yeah, your son, he stole $20 out of my purse. So my dad said, hold on a second. Puts the phone down, walks up to me, and my dad, like, I'm a big dude, but my dad is 10 times more scary to me. He said, son, did you steal $20 from your friend's mom? I said, no. I'm gonna ask you one more time. Did you steal $20 from your friend's mom? No. My dad picks the phone up. My son doesn't lie to me. He didn't steal $20. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry about that. Hangs up the phone. 10 minutes later, she called back. Mr. Spears, my apology. I found the $20 in my couch. Being accused of going into this woman's purses.
How did it make you feel?
You know, I mean, I was broke, but I didn't steal. But I mean, like, I think, you know, seeing the pain on my dad's face, the anger,
Yeah.
that's when it hit.
When was the moment, Maria, when you knew you were black?
The moment that I knew I was black, I remember me and my family would always take road trips. So we'd drive down from Chicago to Atlanta. That's the hometown for my parents. And so, you know, we'd get down to the South. And I remember my dad would always tell my brother, you know, watch your sister, because we're going into this store. And just kind of like, it shifted when we got on the road. You're watching your sister. So we go into this restaurant and they have a ton of toys that are in there. And so I'm playing, because there's a lot of kids in the restaurant playing with toys. And there's a lady who works there that's walking around. She's like, you guys need to put those down. And I'm like, man, I'm not recognizing it. You know, I'm probably 5 years old. My brother's 9, he's 4 years older than me. And I just keep playing. And my brother grabs me, he's like, okay, come on, like, and takes me away from the situation. And I remember, and he was like, listen, she came over there because you're black, and you can't play like everybody else. And he didn't know how he was describing it, you know, like, he didn't know at the time how to say to me, like, things are a little different and people view you different, but you can't play like everybody else. And I just remember that kind of being something like, what does that really mean? And it takes a little bit of time for it to set in, but I knew that, like, me not being able to play had something to do with me being black and just kind of like sitting with that. But I guess the lady thought that we were gonna steal whatever toys we were playing with, or I don't know, take them to the wrong place or put them in the wrong section. Probably take them. Yeah.
Can we talk about one more thing?
Yes.
Just one more thing.
Yes.
Do it.
So the title of this is Shut Up and, right?
What is that?
Shut Up and, right? And so it just, I cannot, I'm just still shocked that there are some people who believe that athletes, because they are athletes, should be disqualified about speaking out about anything other than their sport. And so this shut up and dribble thing that I believe started with, was it Laura Ingraham?
Yeah.
Yes.
And most recently has been doubled down upon by Zlatan, the Swedish soccer star.
Yes.
I wish that they were sitting here in the room. I would ask Zlatan.
In the kitchen, yeah.
I would ask him in the kitchen, what threatens you about our voices? When you hear us speak, when you see fellow athletes speak, when you hear LeBron speak, more importantly, when you see LeBron build a school, when you see Russell build a school, when you see Drew Holiday give up his salary to start a foundation, what threatens you about that? What makes you think that these men, the women of the WNBA, what makes you think that the only thing that they were put here on this earth to do is to play a sport? Isn't that awfully short-sighted? Wouldn't that be a waste of human resources? And if I were your kid, if LeBron were your son, if Megan Rapinoe were your daughter, would you want them to just shut up and just play their sport? Or would you encourage them to be the best that they can be, become as well-versed as they can be, but most importantly, to stand up for what's right and what's wrong? Wouldn't you do that as a parent? When the Michael Jordans, when the Tiger Woods, when they didn't really say a whole lot in their generation, they were criticized for that. And I kind of looked at them as, you know, people have to, you got to do you. Right. If they don't feel that they really have strong opinions, I'm sure they had strong opinions.
Like, LeBron James is not the problem. The players speaking out is most certainly not the problem. But I do think it's threatening because what they've never wanted is for us to realize our power.
But if they didn't feel comfortable to say what their strong opinions were about certain societal things, that's fine. But when you have athletes who do, and some, like, there has been this awakening in the past year that, again, some athletes have just found this voice that they, you know what, I want to speak and I want to use it. Why in the world would you ever tell someone to shut up? Because we pay them to do this. That's absolutely right, you do. And so if I were LeBron, I would say, and you get the rest of me for free.
Right.
You get the rest of me for free.
Isn't there
but you're
a long
going to get
history of activism in sports anyway?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
100%.
that's not new.
Jesse Owens,
Yeah.
1968.
And always the
Carlos,
pushback.
Tommy Smith.
It's
and-
not new. You know, Ali. I mean,
Bill
it's
Russell.
It's just not new.
Yeah. Cap.
I was going to say, let's not forget Colin Kaepernick. So it's interesting, this notion of shut up and dribble. So. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's keep the conversation going. Use the hashtag Soul of a Nation to voice your opinions about the things we discussed today. I'm Sunny Hostin, and I'll be back in the kitchen next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for keeping the conversation going with us, and be sure to catch full episodes of Soul of a Nation on ABC every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. Don't go anywhere. There's much more of ABC News Live still ahead.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.